This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Marriott's on the move.
What?
Marriott's on the move.
Again?
Marriott's on the move.
If you're dreaming about moving to a new city to pursue the life of your dreams, this podcast is for you. Moving 18 times in 23 years to 5 of America's top cities, I know it's not easy to make those decisions alone. I help you develop the dream, the plan, and the move, even if we need to get scrappy to get you there. I'll be doing interviews, career and city spotlights, and sharing my crazy moving stories, tips, tricks, and scams to avoid. Traveling to explore your dreams has never been easier. Now let's get moving. So I am very excited about our guest on the show today. Katie Lyon is a fellow podcaster, and she co-hosts a podcast called The Landlord Diaries, which we'll totally get into. But it's all about midterm rentals and real estate investing. And they discuss topics like investment strategies and property management, but they also give tips for using a company called Furnished Finder, which they both are employees at. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. But Furnish Finder is a midterm rental company, which is different than short-term rentals like Airbnb and VRBO. But if you've been listening to the show, and I hope this isn't the first time, but if it is the first time, I always suggest doing a city proof of concept before you move to the city of your dreams, because there's so many things that, happen in a city and you want to get to know a little bit better. I always talk about 5 days or longer. But if you can move for like a month or so before throwing caution to the wind and just getting rid of all your stuff, Furnish Finder is always the way to go, in my opinion, and I always recommend them. So when they reached out after I, sent a note to them saying, "Can you please be on my podcast?" and they graciously said yes, I was super excited to have them. So Katie, welcome to the show. I'm very excited about having you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So Furnish Finder started in 2014, and you guys were focused on like travel nurses and medical professionals, right?
Right. We started in 2014. We kind of took a couple of deviations to get to the kind of business layout that we are now with the marketplace. Initially it was all based on traveling medical professionals, and most people just know them as travel nurses, but there's all sorts of traveling medical professionals. And it just kind of grew and expanded. And it's taken off. It's exciting.
Well, I imagine, especially because you don't just do travel professional or medical professionals anymore. You do kind of all kinds of travelers, remote workers, people who are like renovating houses, like people have been displaced by fires.
Yeah.
I've heard about that. But I imagine COVID was a pretty big explosion for you guys when it came to like people trying to use you.
Yeah, COVID was big on a couple of fronts. The demand for travel nurses and traveling medical professionals definitely surged during that time, just because one area of the country might have been experiencing a really big peak in COVID cases or like severe COVID cases. Another area of the country might have been not experiencing that peak. So there was a lot of kind of shuffle within the needs for travel staffing. So that was a huge thing. The other thing was, and this is a little bit more post-COVID, but we all lead much more remote lives now, right? Like I feel like, and I don't have the hard data behind this, but I feel like it's much more uncommon for someone to go in the office 5 days a week if they have a job that's, remote friendly, versus having like a flexible schedule or a hybrid schedule or an option schedule, right? We're just kind of lifestyles have changed so much that it was a huge shift for both of those. So like the medical needs just went through the roof. And then we all, we saw the rise of digital nomads or traveling families that might have been homeschooling, or people who wanted to spend a month next to grandma in the summer, or things like that, where we just kind of all adapted and valued this flexibility in our lives.
Yeah, I think it was much needed, first of all, but I think it taught everybody a really big lesson that they can work and enjoy where they live. So I imagine, because you guys have over, a couple 100,000 properties across the country now?
Yeah, we're at about 250,000. It's growing every day, which is just crazy. But the demand is still it's still so high. The demand still far outweighs the supply, and this midterm rentals, that's what we like to refer to as a 30-day plus furnished stay. I think it's just still in its infancy so much, right? As we all continue to adapt to kind of this remote lifestyle and the flexible options and um yeah, it's crazy how many use cases there are for these 30-day plus rentals. Like you wouldn't think, but really, like you said, you've got people who maybe their house was damaged. You have the traveling professionals, and not just medical, right? But you also have athletes, you have professors, you have people who are just on contract. You have maybe engineers who are coming to work on planning a gas line, special projects, right? I had an inquiry at one of my properties recently for some grandparents who just wanted to go live closer to their grandbabies for the summer. So you have all these, yeah, it is. And you have all these different use cases. So it's really cool.
So you are a landlord with Furnish Finder, right? So you have several properties. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the process? So I get asked a lot about, like college kids who have an internship that they want, that they've got a 2-month internship. They can't afford to do Airbnb for 2 months with all the booking fees and all the stuff. Like, I know you guys don't have booking fees or commissions or anything like that. So that's a huge cost saver, because when somebody is renting from you, they're paying like the month's rent, not like the month's rent plus $600 for fees, right?
Right. Exactly. So that is the biggest differentiator between us and any other platform, right? For us, it's you pay to list your property. You pay $149 and you can list your property for a year. And during that, you're going to get unlimited leads. So what that means for a traveler is, that everybody on the site is serious. It's kind of like they've paid a little bit of the entrance fee, but then what the price listed for rent, like we're not adding any padding to that, right? That, because a lot of times the sites, the price you see is inflated by the website, right? By that marketplace. Ours truly is if I'm a landlord and I need to charge $1,600, that is what you are going to pay. So that means a much, much more affordable experience for the traveler. And Furnished Finder itself, you aren't going to pay any fees on Furnished Finder as a traveler. We're all just about trying to make these connections between traveler and landlord.
Yeah. So are there different kind of, because I know with short-term rentals, there's all kinds of permits and things that
yeah, so generally speaking, and every area is different, the law varies by state and county and city, and some HOAs are all different, so you definitely need to check. But generally speaking, 30 days and up is classified as a long-term rent. So that's for insurance purposes, for legal purposes, that all of those still put it into two buckets, short term or long term. And they say long term is 30 days or more. So that makes it way, way, way easier for a midterm rental landlord. And it makes it easier for the traveler too, because that you're going to have a lot more options. You don't have to worry about a lot of those. A lot of times the taxes don't apply if you're 30 days or more. It's definitely state and city specific, but I've found that in a lot of cities and states, that once you hit that 30-day mark, that crazy tax you have goes away, which is so nice.
That is so nice. Yeah. Somebody that's coming to your service is not just going to be their run-of-the-mill,
right.
Has a crappy place. If they want somebody that's going to live there for 30 days or longer, they're probably really taking care of their properties.
Yeah.
They've got to protect themselves too. I'm sure, because talk about the process a little, because when you join, it's not you talk to the owners, you physically, go through and you talk directly to them. It's not something that Furnished Finder is brokering.
Correct.
Tell me about that.
And this is the biggest learning curve for travelers and for landlords, because you're used to going on to an Airbnb or a Vrbo or whatever, and you're just okay, click, 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 book, you're done.
Yeah.
Right. And that's great if you're going somewhere to stay for a few days, but when you're really living in a place, you want to know the landlord more. You want to know probably more about the area. You probably want to know more about like, what's the bed like? What are, do you have blackout curtains? Like that relationship becomes a lot more important, right? If you're visiting, if I'm going to Miami for 7 days, I don't really need a relationship with that Airbnb host.
Right.
If I'm going to go live somewhere for 6 months, like I want to know that the connection there is a solid one. So first thing is you're going to connect with a landlord that you see on the site that has a property you like. We don't control the way you connect with them, right? And that's another difference is a lot of these other sites, they want to keep you on the platform because otherwise they're going to lose their little commission or their percentage.
Right.
With us, we're going to give you their phone number of the landlord as long as they specify it's okay, obviously, their email address, and you can also message them through the system. So that's really cool because we're like, however you want to communicate, right?
Yeah.
Then you have the chance to sort out all the details. Like, okay, are you okay with pets? Is there a pet deposit? Is the rent a little high? And maybe you're going to stay 6 months. So you're wondering if they can do a little less rent, right? You get the chance to kind of go back and forth and communicate and get to know each other. And once you kind of come to agreements, we do have a sister company called KeyCheck. And KeyCheck originated because we didn't want to leave travelers and landlords in the dark, right? We didn't want to say, okay, you're on your own, right? Because this process is a little bit different than the typical websites. So on there, you can do tenant screening. I always tell my tenants to think about that like an application fee if you're going to apply an apartment or something. It's $39. Traditionally, the tenant pays for it because it's like an application.
Sure.
It's a very it's a very secure screening where it just does like a credit check with a soft pull. It does a background check and an eviction check so that the landlord can feel really comfortable with who's in their property.
Yeah.
And then the landlord on their side can also access lease templates and online payments. So that way, like if you're a traveler and you're like, I want to put this rent on my credit card so I can rack up those miles.
Yeah.
You have the ability to do that, right? So it's pretty much like you're going to connect, you're going to come to agreement, you're going to do a tenant screening, you're going to come across a lease, and then you're going to complete the payments. So it really is like pretty step by step, but it's just a little bit more involved because this whole process is a little more involved. You're not going to stay there for 3 nights, right?
Right.
Boom. Play it.
Have you ever listened to a commercial on the radio or a podcast and thought, I could totally do that? Well, I am challenging you today. Being a voiceover artist is an amazing side hustle that can be done from the comforts of your own home. Heck, it can be an amazing career. Just ask Jesse Carroll. Jesse's got over 1,000 voiceover credits to his name. Ever watch Backroad Truckers? He's the narrator. He's also done a ton of commercials for brands you would definitely recognize. If you're ready to try your hand at voiceovers, go to marriottsonthemove.com and head to my favorites page to learn more about his new digital course and coaching package. If you use code MOTM, you'll get 20% off at checkout.
Hi, I'm Christine, and I'm an alcoholic. Here's the deal. Everybody knows somebody that has suffered from the disease of addiction. I want to invite you to listen to Purpose-Driven Sobriety, where we have real conversations with real people that have suffered from the disease of addiction and have gone on to thrive. Here, we shine light into the darkness that is addiction. You can find Purpose-Driven Sobriety on Facebook or anywhere you get your podcasts.
I kind of like too that you, like as a landlord, you have skin in the game, right? So you're, doing all the things that you need to do and making sure this is a nice property. But then also as a tenant, we've got some skin in the game. We're going through the background check so you as a landlord feel comfortable. That was one, granted, I'm in a subdivision where I have an HOA and we, it's a minimum 2-year lease if somebody's renting the place out. I know it's kind of
That's
crazy.
high.
But the other side of it is that, like, as I've never thought about renting out my place because like I just
Right.
built it. It's really nice. And I don't want somebody like you think of traditional renters, which I've rented from places and I'm a great tenant, right? But not everybody is. Like you hear
Right.
horror stories or people
Yeah.
squatting and,
Yeah.
somebody that's going to go through the process of getting a background check and all that stuff, they probably aren't the bad guys.
Exactly. Right. And we want everyone to feel really confident in,
Mhm.
the traveler and their choice of landlord and their landlord, their choice of tenant. Like, that's what we want. We want, because these are professionals traveling, and you know that, right? Like,
Yeah.
people aren't going to rent your house to party for 6 months. Like, they're there
Right.
for a purpose.
Right.
So this just kind of helps facilitate that and make it so everybody feels really good and really confident. And it just like sets the standard for that relationship going forward. And it makes it just really smooth. I mean, I always think with my tenants, I'm like, I want to get all of my expectations like clear, like day one.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where a lease comes in. And that's, you get to put your house rules, and you get to put, what exactly is included in rent, what kind of
Mhm.
pets are okay. And it makes it so everything is just laid out on the table and you're really set up for a good relationship.
Well, so as a landlord, and I guess this is both for Furnish Finder and just in general, like what are some things, because a lot of the listeners that I have on the show, it's twofold, right? So we have some
Mhm.
college age students that are graduating and are going to go out in the world and find the city of their dreams, and then there's other people who have been dreaming about moving for 10 years and they just never pulled the trigger, and now they're
Right.
going to, and they might rent out their own house and rent somewhere. But like as a landlord, what are some things that you look for, and kind of what are your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a landlord, and I have, just as a little background, I have 10
Yeah.
rentals. All they're mostly within the state of Iowa. That's where I'm from originally, and my family and I do it together. So,
Yeah.
they're still there, so it makes it kind of a nice location for us. But I'm looking for tenants that, they have a clear background history. I'm looking for tenants who communicate really clearly. I'm looking
Mhm.
for tenants with a purpose of their stay. Right.
Okay.
And that tells me a lot about who they are and kind of what they're using the property
Yeah.
for, right? Like I mentioned, I had that inquiry from grandparents who were coming to stay, and that then I was able to tell them, okay, hey, there's a third bedroom and we put a trundle bed in there if your grandkids ever
Oh,
want to spend the
yeah.
night, right? Or if it's a travel nurse, make sure to tell them like, okay, hey, this is in a busy area or it's a quiet area. We've put in things like blackout curtains to make it better for you, and the mattress is really comfortable. So
Mm,
it lets me really communicate to them what are the important factors.
yeah.
So I think that's really helpful. But just asking what they're staying for and kind of what their plans are is really, really helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure, I mean, the property and the area better than anybody. So being able to leverage you as a property owner, you're going to know like, hey, I have a bike in the
Right.
shed. If you want to go take a bike ride,
Right.
here's a safe path. I
Yeah.
think that that's the two things that I was always looking for when I was looking for a place, because like real estate agents cannot tell you like this is a safe area, quote unquote, or this is not a safe area.
Right. Yeah,
Like you're
they have some bounds, right?
Mhm.
But I will always tell people like I feel safe in this area, right? And
Yeah.
like this is an older neighborhood, but it's full of families or things like
Yeah.
that, right? So I want them to feel really comfortable because they are professionals and they're there. Even a recently graduated student who's looking for an internship, like they're a professional, right?
Right.
And they're looking for a home. And
Yeah.
that's how I differentiate it in my mind too. Like when you're doing a short-term rental, you're looking for a stay. You
Yeah.
always say like, I need somewhere to stay. I need a hotel to stay at. I need an
Right.
Airbnb to stay at. And these tenants, when you're looking for somewhere 30 days and up, you're looking for somewhere to live,
Right. They're
right?
not
And it's like,
tourists.
no, and it's like a very clear differentiation, right? Like
Mhm.
you want these things that make you feel cozy. You might want some extra blankets. You might want, you definitely want your own linen, like extra linens. You're going to be doing laundry there. You
Right.
care if there's a washer and dryer. If I'm going to an Airbnb for 5 days, I don't really care if there's a washer and dryer. I'm not doing
Right.
laundry on vacation.
Right.
But it's just kind of a different frame of mind. But it's really important that you let anyone, especially if people are traveling and they're trying out a new city,
Mhm.
that you give them an accurate kind of like, okay, this is what it would be like to live here,
Yeah.
right? So they can get a true feel of it.
I think that's huge, and that's kind of why I coach around the city POC, because as as a proof of concept, like the whole definition of a proof of concept is to try something before you buy it, right?
Yeah.
And just to make sure it works for you. I have a friend of mine who was looking to move to Asheville, and they found a property on Zillow that was for sale. They fell in love with the pictures.
Right.
And, in passing, I kind of mentioned this concept, and I said, well, why don't you go live there for a couple of weeks? They both, he and his wife both work remote. They're a quiet, lovely couple, and, just go check it out. You can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they stayed in two different areas, and turns out they didn't, like, they live now nowhere near where that property was. There was all kinds of stuff around the property or something that they
Yeah.
didn't love, but it gave them an opportunity to really go on little excursions, see what the local grocery store was like, so, check out kind of that
Yeah.
area. And there are some places like, if I were to have done the POC in some of my earlier moves, I one probably wouldn't have moved to that area or that state at all. But I
Right.
also probably would have not lived in the particular neighborhoods that I was. Not that they weren't safe or great or anything, but I didn't even know what my options were, because they were big
Right.
cities, and you don't see the suburbs around that could be 10 minutes from where you want to be, but it's like half the cost and much
Right.
cleaner and quieter,
Yeah. You don't know the
So,
city's personality yet, right?
right.
It's also nice, even if like you've decided on, okay, I want to move to Asheville.
Hmm.
It's in this market, and I think it's going to be a long time until we get out of a market that this would be sufficient for. Is like, it's nice to have a property that you can stay at on a monthly basis until you find the exact right house, right?
Right.
If you're looking to buy, because inventory is low. So you're like, okay, don't have as many choices. Interest rates are higher. So you're like, I'm not looking to buy and sell 42 times. I want to get it right the first time.
Right.
So I've had some people as tenants who were either remodeling their home so they could keep their interest rate, or I've had tenants who were like, we're moving here, but it's taking us a while to find a house and we're looking to get our roots settled, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
great, right? Even if let's say you want to move to Denver, but you're not sure which suburb or which area,
Right.
that can be really helpful too, because then you can take some day trips or explore here and there. So
We don't make
that's,
good decisions when we're like under pressure and there's like
oh my
very little to
gosh,
choose
yeah.
from, right?
Yeah, you got to get there and you got to experience a little bit. We also have a tool on our website. It's called a housing request. And this is one of my favorite traveler tools. It's if you go to the website and you just click via travelers, actually, hang on, let me rephrase that so I can actually find what it's really called, because I am on here so much. Oh yeah, it's just called housing request. Okay. So if you're on our website, right at the top, there's just one thing that says housing request. And what it does is you put in your information and kind of your wish list, right? Like, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom. I want my own private unit. I'm not looking for a room share situation. I have pets. Here are my dates. Here's my budget. And you can kind of put in your details that you're looking for and submit it. And what Furnish Finder will do in the background is they will take a look at our database of landlords and listings, and they will distribute your housing request to those owners and listings where it's a match or it's a close match, right?
Okay.
And that, again, is just us like opening the doors for those communications. So then you'll start getting messages from landlords like, hey, I have exactly what you're looking for. Let me tell you a little bit about it. Or you might get messages like, hey, I know you're looking for a 3-bedroom. I have a 4-bedroom. Would that work? Or
that's
I know
awesome.
this was your budget. Like, do you have any flexibility? Or I know you wanted free parking. My parking's $50 a month. Would that still work for you? And our goal there is that it can save the traveler a little bit of time, especially if you've got a lot going on, because moves are not easy. So you
cheap.
can, or cheap, right? So like we can just kind of filter the crowd for you a little bit. And like, it's almost like speed dating. Like we're starting to set the tables for you. And then
Yeah.
you can look through those and you can message back who might be a fit. So that's something that is really cool. And it's handy for landlords because we get to, if we have someone who might be a really great fit, we can tell them a little bit more about our properties.
And you have another there's like a whole data tool too, which I was like looking at, which is really cool. Can you explain that a little bit? Because
Yeah.
for me, if I'm looking into a city and I see a lot of people live over here and nobody lives over here, like I'm gonna want to live over here, right?
Right. Yeah, it's really the first thing is when you go and you search the map, you're also going to see a physical map and it's going to have dots where properties are. So you can definitely find some hot spots that way. And then you can compare that if it's a city you don't know anything about, like what's pulling everyone to the west side, or
Right.
why is sometimes it's like the east side is super expensive, sometimes it's all acreages over like you never know, but it gives you like some insights, right? But the hard data is really great. It's on our site and it's where you can do some research and see, well, what is a typical property gonna cost me here? Because in this country, like that can vary so
significantly.
much. And you might not know, right?
Right.
So I always tell people, I'm like, when you're on Furnished Finder, look at the areas we have that actually pull data and statistics, and then spend some time in the map and pull your own inferences as well, right? Because those are just as important.
I imagine too, like somebody just looking for like to buy a house in the area, even if you live in that area, that data is probably really incredible as a
Oh my
tool.
gosh.
You know what I mean? Just in general
It's so
to
nice.
know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it helps landlords know how to like serve the demand there, right? Okay. So it can also be really helpful. Like, let's say you're going to go try out a new city. Don't leave your property empty, right? Like, you can put it up on Furnished Finder. It's
Right.
$149 to list your property. And
Yeah.
you can backfill it and then pay your mortgage or offset your mortgage or help to cover some costs, right? You're not going to leave, like, if you're going to go to try out, like you said, this proof of concept, you're going to go try out a new market for 30 days. You're not going to take your couch, right? You're going to leave your stuff. So you immediately have a furnished rental on your hands.
Yeah.
And being a midterm landlord is not as intimidating as being like an Airbnb host. And we have so many resources on the website to help walk you through it. And again, like our travelers are professionals. So we have a lot of travelers do that where they're like, okay, I'm going to go here for a project or a contract or whatnot. I'm going to backfill mine.
Yeah.
And it works. It's like, you're helping everybody by offering, another rental and more options.
I don't think people really understand how incredibly expensive it is to move in and out of a place if they haven't done it in a while or done it ever. Like, you're not paying first month's, last month's rent, plus like the rental of couches and beds and things like that, because people do that. There are companies out there that you can rent all those things from.
Yeah.
But then you're paying all of that on top of your fees for the actual like rental itself, which is insane.
It's insane.
So that all adds up. But even if somebody was moving, like I had a guy that I had a conversation with probably, I think it was like last summer, but he had a lot of flexibility and freedom in his job and he was thinking about moving to North Carolina. But when I said, like, where are you thinking about moving to? Because the minute somebody's like, oh, I'm moving, I get like, I grab popcorn. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear the story.
Tell me more.
Why do you want to move? Tell me more. I love it.
Right.
But I mean, that's the thing. He's like, well, I heard about this and that city and that city. So I think I'm just going to spend a week in each. And I was like, why would you spend a week? And
right. What are you going to get in a week?
Lived in Michigan. Right. Nothing. Like everything's magical over a weekend. That's why I always tell people at least 5 days. But like over a couple weeks or a couple months, like you can really, really explore. And then if you decide like, you know what, I don't actually want to move here at all. Now you have somewhere to go back home to, and you didn't just waste a ton of money. Man.
Yeah.
But
The fees get insane, especially when you're looking at these, Airbnb and Verbo and a lot of these platforms that you book on their platform, the fees get insane. I
Mhm.
mean, especially as a traveler, it's insane. It's
I
very
just
typical with a midterm host, like on Furnished Finder, to require a deposit,
Sure.
but it's usually like a third of the month's rent, right?
Right.
It's not the same as a long-term rental. We just want to know that like you have some skin in the game. And again, like if something breaks, it's not a big issue. But it's all like just much more, everything is more reasonable, like
Yeah.
everything.
Do
Yeah.
you typically get that deposit back, or is that something that they put towards rent or something?
I have only had, and I'll speak personally here. This is the joy that I get to be like landlord and furnish finder. Like I get to be like, well, here's my experience. And it's not
Right.
like it's my actual real experience.
Right.
I have had one instance where I kept half of a deposit, and it's because there was a hole in the duvet cover. And there was a pan that my cleaner for the life of her could not get like a residue off of. I don't know what they cooked. It was probably delicious, but it just kind of ruined the pan. And they were fine. They were like, okay, great. Thank you so much. Like, no problem. Because again, it was like everything's reasonable, right? And
Right.
it's so refreshing to have that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I think that the 30 days is such a great like minimum because you really get a lot of experience in that area. You get to travel around, you get to experience like kind of what that town really would be without really having a whole lot of risk. And I think
Yeah.
that today's buyer, especially with the like the mortgage rates being as low as they were, people not wanting to give up their properties, like this is such a great alternative that because you could get I lived in San Diego. San Diego is amazing,
Mm-hmm.
right? But after like a year there, I was like, I don't know. Like I need like more business. And like as I was, newer in my career and I was traveling a lot and I was like, gosh, like it was such a fun experience. And I would love to go back for a month or two, but I don't want to move back there. Right.
Right.
But
Right.
to do that, like you have to have some sort of opportunity because I know I just spent a couple days in an Airbnb. And like one, it was like a Dateline episode, first of all. We couldn't get in touch with the person that was like renting it out to us. And we were like, there are all kinds of scary noises. We've got a lot of stuff going on. We can't find more towels. Like, what's happening? And we never heard back from them. And then at the end of the weekend, like it was supposed to be like $100 a night. With all the fees and everything, we paid almost $400 for like the worst weekend ever.
It's
I shouldn't say it was
insane. It
worst.
adds up so
It really
quick.
does.
It
I
adds up
know.
so quick. I mean, we're even as a family, like we'll be looking at a property, to go on vacation, and we love staying
Yeah.
at Airbnbs. I'm gonna re-say that. Okay, you're gonna have
We
so
love
much
dogs on the
editing.
podcast.
Yeah, I know. It gets the fees get to be a lot. Like even when we're looking, we'll try to look for like you said, like a property like $100 a night, or we'll set our budget and we'll think that we built in enough padding for fees. We definitely did not ever. And it gets to be so, so, so much. And what travelers may or may not realize is on all of those sites, you pay a fee, but the landlord also pays a fee, right? So like everybody's getting dinged.
Yeah.
And that's why we kind of flipped the script, and on Furnish Finder, it's like, no, this is like you're going to pay a low, reasonable fee to
Mhm.
list your property. And that lets us ensure that like the quality is great and everything. But then we're like, we want you guys to all find great tenants, and we want tenants to find great landlords, but like, we're not going to take a cut of it, right? Like we're not going to add on. We're not
Right.
going to, I always tell people, it's like they give you the cupcake and then they take the frosting. And I want all of my frosting. Like I want it.
Right. I paid for the whole cupcake.
I paid for the
Give
whole
me
cupcake.
the whole cupcake.
Or like, don't give me a free cupcake and then take the frosting. I'll pay you
Yeah, charge me for
$1
the sprinkles.
and
Right.
let me keep my whole cupcake. So it's nice, especially in like today's world where like I feel like there is a fee for everything.
Everything.
Right.
I
I will say like our sister company KeyCheck, we have, I don't call them fees. There's prices associated with like a
Sure.
lease template or a background screening, but they're all so transparent and they're all so low that it's like, these are just tools and we want to make sure everybody has the right tools to set them up for success. But like, I don't know. It's just, I always look at something and I'm like, you know, you get DoorDash and I'm like, all of a sudden my $20 order is $72. And I'm like,
I know.
what has just happened in this life? So
know.
I love that. And I love that about midterm rentals too. Like everybody's just good people trying to find houses, homes, really.
Well, it gives you flexibility and it gives you freedom and it gives you a safe place to stay where you can actually talk to the landlord and then they feel good about you. Right. I mean, I know a lot of people, like a friend of mine that I work with, like they're going to do a sabbatical, right? You know, like this
awesome.
is a great opportunity for her to rent out her house. She lives in Boca. Amazing. You know, like there's so many things that people can do if they want to go away. And, you know, some people have had a dream to travel to Europe for their whole life and never did it. And now they're in a place where they could. Like, here's a great opportunity. Rent your place out for 3 or 4 months and go live in Greece or Italy because that's what I want to do when I'm, retiring. So,
and it's much less to handle as a landlord as well, I will say. I haven't had a short-term rental yet. If I'm being honest, it intimidates me a little bit, the management side of it, because I'm like, if you message me at 10 p.m. and you need like an extra towel, like I don't know how to help you. But we like I said, I have 10 properties and we manage them with my family. So we have, you know, full support. But that being said, like I have a full-time job. I have young kids. I have countless dogs. Like it's like very manageable for me to do that. I mean, a lot of times I'll talk to my tenant at check-in and at move out, and that's kind of it. Cause like they're not there to vacation. They're living there. They're living there. And maybe I'll be like, you know, they might let me know, hey, the fridge isn't working or, you know, just general questions, but it's like I handle it all from my phone. I mean, I'm 850 miles from my closest midterm rental.
Wow.
There's 3 of my rentals I've never stepped foot in.
Wow.
And it's fine. Awesome. It's fine. And everybody still feels, you know, comfortable and welcomed and taken care of.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, average length of stay, what is it, like 60, 90 days? Like what is, or is it?
Right now, it kind of hovers between like 90 and 110 days. So you're seeing kind of at that 3-month mark, which lines up with travel nurse contracts pretty well, but also a lot of other work contracts, right? A lot of people are going on 3-month contracts for projects. It's also pretty common, like, you know, if your dishwasher floods and you have to get put on insurance housing, you know, they say it's going to take a month, it's going to take 3. But yeah, that means you've got 4 tenants a year. It's pretty great.
That's nice. That's so much nicer than a short-term rental.
Right? I know.
Yes. Well, so if somebody wants to explore your services, Katie, where do they go?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to furnishedfinder.com. If you're a traveler, you can search the map. If you're a traveler and you want to make, you know, some revenue off of your own property while you're traveling, check out the List Your Property, or if you're any other type of property owner. Under the resources tab, I will say we have resources for travelers and landlords. We have a great podcast that's landlord focused called the Landlord Diaries. You're welcome to connect with us on social media. Pretty much, you know, search for us and you'll find us. And we're like, we all just live and breathe midterm rentals, and we're here like to make this space better than it has ever been before. So we're pouring our hearts and souls into it every day, and we can't wait to see what happens with it.
Well, I am very excited for this. I think that this is going to be a great alternative for a lot of people. It's going to open up a lot of doors and give them some freedom to do things that maybe they didn't anticipate being able to do affordably in the past. So
yes,
thank you so much. I'm sure this won't be the last time we have you on the show. But thank you so much for doing the interview. And like, you know, I can't wait to see how this goes. I feel like a lot of stuff is going to come out of this. Some good stories.
I hope so. Thank you so much. It was so good to chat.
You too. Well, I could go on forever and ever about moving you closer to your dreams, but I probably should save some thoughts for the next episode. A big thanks goes out to you for making time for me today. And making time for me, you're making time for future you, and we're both grateful. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the podcast, download the episodes, and leave me a 5-star review. I would really appreciate it. In return, if you go to my website, marriottsonthemove.com, and register for the Monday mailer, I'll send you a free Fred workbook to get your journey started. This is also where you can find all the show notes and all the ways to get in touch with me. A special thanks goes out to Rogue Media for its wisdom and partnership. Until next time, friends, keep moving forward towards your dreams. Oh, and the legal stuff. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I am a certified coach, not a licensed therapist, and this is not meant to replace the professional advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals. This is solely my perspective based on my own experience and training. Okay, now it's over. For reals. Bye for now.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.